Hello, good evening, and welcome back to Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Ed McCullough. Our guest this evening, Andy Patrick. Andy is Republican candidate for South Carolina House seat number 123. Primary for that election is Tuesday, June 8th. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Ed.
So we left off the first segment, and we're talking about transparency and accountability.
Right.
The fact that many votes are not recorded up in Columbia. What are the odds that you can get something passed or put in place that mandates that the votes are recorded so that the people know how their representatives are voting?
Well, Ed, there are like-minded legislators in both the House and the Senate that want to see us move in that direction. And so by working with them and building that coalition, I think that we have a real chance in getting that transparency. And when we have that transparency, then we'll be more accountable. I, for one, will post my record on my own website so that the voters of Hilton Head Island can see what it is we voted on and how I voted.
Now, in terms of transparency and accountability, the other thing that comes up as an issue is where'd the money come from for you to run for this office? Are you indeed collecting money from individuals? Are you collecting money from special interests? And are you being transparent about that side of the equation?
Well, I think that's one thing that South Carolina does a very good job of. You can go online to the Ethics Commission and determine what candidate or what representative, how much money they receive and who they receive it from. And so in that way, we're very transparent. And
so where do we go to check on that?
The Ethics Commission, I think if you Google Ethics Commission, I'm not sure if
Ethics Commission, State of South Carolina,
Yeah.
you'll be able to pull up,
Yeah.
for instance, the incumbent and see, for instance, where
his
cash
money comes
came
from and what his expenditures are. Yeah, sure.
And characterize for us in general where your money is coming from, and if indeed you perceive that to be a departure from the methods of your predecessor or the incumbent, I should say.
Yeah. Well, all my donations come from individuals. Small donations, wish they were larger donations. But no, every one of those donations and contributions are welcomed, and they all come from individuals. And if you take a look at the incumbent's filings, then you'll see that a lot of his money, in fact, I think last quarter it all came from either corporations or special interests. None of it came
100%.
from individuals.
Well, let's talk about what I'll call representative democracy, which, you know, in this day and age can sound like an anachronism of sorts, but let's take it as it relates to the issue of the 1-cent sales tax. And permit me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I definitely have a sense of you as a Republican, as a small government guy, as a guy who's not interested in throwing taxes here, there, and everywhere. But despite your personal position on these issues, the 1-cent sales tax looms out there as an item that has been proposed to be put to the people in a vote in a referendum. Do you think that should be put to a vote in a referendum, or because of your personal views, would you prefer to prevent that?
No, absolutely. It should be allowed for the people of Hilton Head Island to determine what course they want to take. And this legislation does just that. It's a 1-penny sales tax increase. Fundamentally, I'm opposed to increases in taxes. But this is another tool in the toolbox for Hilton Head Island. If we're going to be competitive from a tourism perspective, and that is the economic engine driving this local economy, then we need to think outside the box and be creative in how we're going to do that. And I think that this 1-penny sales tax allows us the opportunity to at least determine whether that's something that we want to do.
And if indeed it does go to the people in a referendum and it is voted on and they say, yes, we want it, what about controlling or making sure that the money goes where it's supposed to so that it has the biggest payoff?
Well, the way the legislation is drafted currently, 50% of the funds generated as a result of that 1 penny, which would total, the total amount would be somewhere around $9 million. 50% of that would go toward funding marketing or advertising to promote Hilton Head as a destination. 30% of that would go to mitigate or offset property tax, both for primary and secondary residential properties. And then the other 20% would go to capital improvements specifically targeting those that would impact tourism.
So, you mentioned that we are, in fact, a tourism economy, and I've heard numbers as high as 75% of the local economy.
It's a billion-dollar industry locally, yeah.
It's a billion-dollar industry, and there is something to be said for not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Sure.
And certainly we are evolving and maturing as a destination resort. The construction, Hilton Head is pretty close to reaching build-out. We're not going to have the building and perhaps not the level of real estate transactions that we've had in
Right.
years leading up to today. Is there a diversification option that you would promote from your seat number 1, 2, 3?
Well, that's a great point. I think, I do believe that we need to further diversify our economy locally, and that we can't put all our eggs in one basket. But you got to remember, Ed, most people that come here as tourists end up relocating here, whether they retire here or they relocate their businesses here. Small businesses that make up 95% of the economy, and I think that the uniqueness of this community and the quality of life elements that we hold near and dear to our hearts attract people here. And whether it's going to be in retirement or it's going to be because they want to move their business here, I think of CareCore International and their move to Bluffton. There's a reason for that, and so I think that as we build that, as we redevelop our community so that we can remain competitive, so that we sort of refresh and revitalize ourselves, it'll attract more people here. Not more people in numbers, but bring us and at least allow us to continue to be competitive.